shoulder. Haaland! Oh, wonderful! He has nailed it for Norway!
April 2nd, 2024. Pep Guardiola warned us something about Erling Haaland, but almost everyone ignored it. Now, 2 years later, as the 2026 World Cup knockout stage unfolds, every single word he said is becoming reality. Haaland has already knocked Brazil out of the tournament with 2 goals in the round of 16. He's now tied with Messi and Mbappé for the most goals at this World Cup. He's firmly in the Golden Boot race. And today, almost everyone agrees he's one of the best strikers in world football. Remember those words, best striker. But the interesting part, Pep Guardiola saw this coming long before anyone else did.
Back in 2024, at a press conference, Guardiola said he is the best striker in the world. And honestly, nobody even blinked. We'd heard him say some version of that for years. That's the weird part. He was saying it before the transfer, before the Premier League records, before all the trophies. He just kept saying it, and people kept finding new reasons not to believe him. I mean, people talk about Mbappé, Yamal, Olise, and fair enough, they're incredible. But somehow, Haaland still doesn't get the credit he deserves. And look, to be fair, those guys play in teams that are already packed with world-class talent. Meanwhile, Haaland is out there like a lone warrior, carrying the hopes of an entire country. I mean, Norway would probably build him a statue if they qualified for everything. And he almost did it. Against Brazil, he looked like the one player who could actually win the game for them. But here's what made Guardiola's opinion so interesting. This is a manager who literally spent an entire season without a proper number 9, a guy famous for benching strikers. And then he goes and signs the most direct, old-school goal scorer in Europe. Not only that, he keeps saying, publicly and repeatedly, that this is the best striker in the world. Everyone thought Guardiola was making a mistake. Even Zlatan Ibrahimovic said Haaland still had a long way to go before reaching the level Zlatan was at. Now, don't get me wrong, comparing eras is always messy, but Haaland has already scored more World Cup goals in his first World Cup than Zlatan managed across both of his, which, well, was 0. Still, that alone doesn't prove Guardiola was right. The real reason Guardiola believed in Haaland goes way deeper than most people realized. He saw something everyone else missed. And sooner or later, one of them was going to be proven right, in the most public way possible. Erling Haaland was born in Leeds, England, while his father Alfie played for Leeds United. When Alfie's career wound down, the family moved back to Bryne, a small town on the southwest coast of Norway. His mother, Gry Marita Braut, was a Norwegian heptathon champion. Athleticism wasn't a myth attached to him after he became famous. It was in the family before he ever kicked a ball professionally. At Bryne's academy, coaches remember a thin kid with a buzz cut, quiet, unremarkable to look at. Nobody outside Norway was watching. Ole Gunnar Solskjaer signed him at 16 from Molde, working personally with him on heading and movement inside the box. 2 seasons of development in Norway's top flight. Still, nobody outside Norway was watching. In 2018, a fan posted a tweet that read, "There's a kid scoring goals for fun in the Norwegian First Division, and he's only 18. Remember this name, Erling Braut Haaland." Nobody remembered it. Not yet. Red Bull Salzburg did their homework anyway and signed him in 2019. Years later, their own sporting director admitted the truth out loud. Other clubs had real doubts about him at that age. Technically, he is not so perfect, one scout reportedly told Salzburg at the time. There are some issues maybe for the very highest level. Even the people paid to spot the next great striker weren't sure this one would translate. Then he made his Champions League debut for Salzburg against Genk and scored a hat-trick. Not a goal, a hat-trick. On debut. In the biggest club competition in the world. That single performance did more to introduce Haaland to Europe than 2 years of Norwegian and Austrian football combined. He was 19 years old, and the football world was suddenly paying very close attention.
In January 2020, Borussia Dortmund paid to bring him to Germany. In his first full season, he scored 41 goals in 41 games across all competitions. Not a typo. 41 in 41. He won the DFB Pokal with Dortmund in 2021, scoring in the final. Champions League nights keep piling up in his favor. 5 goals in a single tie against RB Leipzig, a wonder goal solo run against Werder Bremen, and later become nominee for the Puskás Award for the best goal of the year. Europe stops treating him as a Scandinavian curiosity and starts treating him as a problem nobody has a clean answer for. Manchester City's director of football, Çiki Bergistan, says it plainly at the time of the eventual transfer. We have been monitoring Erling for several years now, not months, years. City had identified this trajectory long before most of the football world caught up to it. But here's the tension. Nobody fully resolved at the time. Pep Guardiola's Manchester City wasn't obviously built for a player like this. Pep Guardiola's teams pass, rotate, suffocate opponents through possession. His idea of an attacking line is often built on interchangeable technical players rather than a fixed target man. There's a reason City had gone an entire season without a recognized out-and-out number 9 after Sergio Aguero's departure, rotating false nines and wide forwards through the middle instead. Guardiola, by most outside assessments, didn't need a poacher, or so everyone assumed.
When the transfer to Manchester City was finally confirmed in the summer of 2022, reportedly triggered via a release clause in Haaland's Dortmund contract, worth somewhere in the region of 60 to 75 million euros, the doubts weren't quiet. They were public, repeated, and confident. Pundits questioned whether a penalty box striker, a player whose entire game lived on the last 10 yards, could survive inside a system engineered around fluid movement and constant ball rotation. Some pointed directly to City's title-winning season without a recognized striker, as proof Guardiola didn't need one at all, and that signing one might actually disrupt the system that had just delivered a Premier League title. The framing across British and European media was consistent. Haaland was a phenomenal goal scorer, but Guardiola's football wasn't historically built for phenomenal individual goal scorers. It was built around interchangeable pieces circulating the ball at speed. Haaland was, by design and by his own style of play, the opposite of interchangeable. He was a fixed point in the box. That was supposed to be the problem. And through it all, in press conference after press conference, Guardiola kept saying the same thing. Not hedging, not the usual diplomatic caution managers use before a big-money signing is played a single minute. Just repeating, plainly, that this signing was going to work, that Haaland had everything City needed. Nobody was listening the way they should have.
Then the 2022-23 season didn't ease anyone gently. Haaland broke the Premier League single-season goal record with 36 goals, a mark that had stood since the competition moved to a 38-game format. He doesn't take a season to adjust to a new country, a new league, or a new manager's demands. He arrives and immediately rewrites the record books in his very first year. City won the treble that season, Premier League, FA Cup, and Champions League, the club's first ever European Cup. Haaland became the fastest player in the Premier League to reach 100 league goals. He wins the Golden Boot, he's named the Premier League's Player of the Season and the PFA Players' Player of the Year. He finished runner-up for the Ballon d'Or, behind only Lionel Messi. The he won't fit the system theory doesn't just fail quietly. It gets buried under a scoring record nobody in the Premier League's modern era had come close to touching. Guardiola's language evolves with the results, but the underlying belief never really changes. Early on, he calls him a young player whose progress depends on himself. Later, asked to weigh Haaland against every other elite striker in the world, he doesn't hedge at all. I will not change Haaland for anyone because I know him. Asked again more recently, even through a stretch of quieter form, Guardiola's answer stays the same.
Erling is the best striker in the world. Even the way City manages him becomes part of the story. Guardiola has openly discussed wanting Haaland positioned as close to the box as possible, and has spoken about deliberately managing his minutes rather than running him into games City can comfortably win without him. A calculated, long-term use of a resource that critics once said would never fit the system at all. Instead of forcing Haaland to adapt entirely to Guardiola's football, Guardiola adapted parts of his football around Haaland. There was one stage left, the one trophy, the one tournament that had never had Haaland on it. Norway hadn't reached a World Cup since 1998. For years, the question wasn't really about his club form. It was that the best striker on the planet had never played a single minute on football's biggest stage.
But 2026 changed that. Norway qualified. Haaland arrived at his first World Cup already the tournament's most dangerous player on paper, and he didn't waste the stage. Round of 32 against Ivory Coast, a late winner. His own manager, Ståle Solbakken, said afterward he wouldn't swap him for any player in the world. Then came Brazil. Round of 16, five-time champions hunting their sixth. Norway had never beaten them in 4 previous meetings. For most of the match, Haaland barely touched the ball. 30 touches heading into stoppage time, a stat that would look like a quiet afternoon for almost anyone else. Then, in the final 11 minutes, he won the game alone. A header, climbing above Brazil's defense. Then a low, driven finish from the edge of the box in the 90th minute. 2 goals. Brazil pulled one back through a stoppage-time Neymar penalty, but it wasn't enough. Norway won 2-1. Brazil were out. Their earliest World Cup exit since 1990, ended by a country of 5 million people that had waited 28 years just to qualify. The 2 goals took Haaland to 7 for the tournament, level with Lionel Messi and Kylian Mbappé at the top of the Golden Boot race. 62 goals now in 54 caps for Norway. A scoring streak for his country that shows no sign of slowing down. Maybe this will write history in Norway, Haaland said afterward. This is just an insane day. The club doubters had been answered years earlier. The international doubters, the ones who said he wasn't near Mbappé and Yamal, the ones who said none of it counted until he'd done it on a World Cup stage, got their answer in 11 second-half minutes against Brazil.
Go back to that quote. He is the best striker in the world. It wasn't hype. It wasn't a manager talking up his own signing to a room of journalists who'd forget it by Monday. It was the continuation of a conclusion Guardiola had already reached years earlier, back when Haaland was still breaking records in Dortmund yellow, and City were still being told a player built like him didn't belong inside a Guardiola team. He wasn't hyping his own signing. He was describing what was already coming, long before the goals arrived to prove it, at club level, and now, finally, on the biggest stage international football has. Norway now faces England in the quarterfinals. Haaland is tied for the Golden Boot with Messi and Mbappé, chasing a tournament that has never seen a European nation this small go this far. Reports out of Spain have separately linked ongoing tension between Haaland and Guardiola over tactical freedom at club level, reports both City and Haaland's camp have downplayed. Guardiola was right about the player. Every record, every trophy, every reluctant admission from a rival manager confirms it. Now the world is watching him prove it wears a national shirt too. The only question left is how far this version of Haaland, the one nobody built a system around, the one who just did this to Brazil with 30 touches, is actually going to go.